There we are. So I'll catch you up. We this morning talked about just some people are brand new completely to myofascial yoga. So it's sort of introducing them to the general concept of what myofascial yoga is and that it's not a style of yoga, but an approach to yoga and bringing in these aspects that we're weaving into traditional yoga. And a lot of the stuff I said about fascia, I would also add with, and Carol will be talking about that. So all the fascia things
Good,
we're looking forward to hearing.
good.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, thanks, Christine. Christine and I have been together for many years. She came to Florida to help me teach my myofascial release elective with my students. I used to teach in the curriculum at the University of Miami School of Medicine, and I gave a weekend elective to the DPT students to learn Barnes myofascial release for Friday night and all day Saturday. And we worked on each other and I talked about the science. And Christine would come down from the opposite end of the continent, from far upper west to far lower east, to join me and my kiddies in Miami. Um, and so we've kind of grown up together in a lot of this material, especially the material that I'm going to be talking to you about today, um, because it has so much to do with interoception. And that's something that I have explored and discovered in depth since I've known Christine. And we've kind of bandied back and forth about this, about the importance of this, especially as it relates to self-awareness and consciousness. But I am a myofascial release, Barnes myofascial release practitioner. I met John in 1989 and took his course for the first time. And then in 95, I started taking the courses and then began teaching with him in 2006. And so I'm that's the school of manual therapy and therapeutic interaction that I'm most familiar with. But because I'm also an author and editor and have this book, the Integrative Therapies and Rehabilitation, I had to get to know a lot about different kinds of integrative therapies. I'm in the midst right now of doing the fifth edition of that textbook. So I'm thinking a lot about all different kinds. And two of the forms of integrative therapies or holistic therapies or energy-based therapies, I see them all as synonymous, that go so well together with myofascial release. To me, are Barnes style myofascial release, are Reiki and yoga. And Christine is a master in both. And so I understand the flow of energy in these therapies, in all holistic therapies, as being from one source. And it's just a way of channeling it differently through our systems, through our minds and through our bodies and through our consciousness and through our nervous systems. The that which she's asked me to come teach you about today, and it's kind of like we're learning, we're exploring together, because I always love the discussion afterwards, has to do with being aware of our own fascia and where we might need help and what kinds of things we can do to help fascia become even more efficient. Fascia is always doing the very best job it can at efficiency. That's its role, to be the most efficient, effective support for us while from the moment we're conceived until the moment we take our last breath. Fascia is with us with that particular primary goal in mind as this prime system of many systems in us. So with that kind of introduction, unless anybody has any questions, should we go ahead? So I can see my slides. There, okay. Fascial anatomy, biotensegrity, myofascial yoga, and ball placement is the topic that we're going to be talking about today. And as you can see, there is a very determined therapist or student or patient sitting on that ball, trying to figure out how now can I use this soft ball to engage this system within me. Okay, let me see if I can move this forward. Okay, come on. There we go. The key questions that I thought about in presenting this material to you include these. What is living fascia? And what is the extracellular matrix? And then what is the ground substance as it relates to this fascia and extracellular matrix? What is a fascial restriction? And how does it affect our movement in the world? In the world. And then what is interoception? And how does it work? And what does it have to do with fascia and ground substance and restrictions and ball placement? And what's the connection between interoception and fascia? And then what is the effect of using soft balls on fascia? So we'll start out with the living fascial matrix. And I think probably all of you have seen Jean-Claude Guimbarteau's marvelous Strolling Under the Skin. But we forget sometimes, I think, that fascia is a three-dimensional web, because so much of what we're doing when we're studying fascia is two-dimensional. It's flat, it's a picture. And we see layers, and we don't see the holistic morphology. We see a picture of anatomy. And just like this picture here on the right, that's not the way it is at all. It's kind of like that, but it's not sufficient. There are two really big errors in that picture. It's a continuous three-dimensional web from the top of our head to the bottom of our feet. It's composed of, all fascia is composed of elastin, a very springy protein substance, collagen, not so springy, another protein, with other cells, either myofibers, fibrocytes or fasciocytes or terabytes or all kinds of teracytes or all kinds of sites and all kinds of cells embedded within that fascia, including the parenchyma of all the organs. And I'll talk about that and the importance of that. With this mucopolysaccharide ground substance, this jello type substance, that's what you see there, the fibrillar network of the gel over on the right. And then this, it's not really water as we know it, it's really crystalline water. It's not H2O, it's H3O2. We'll talk about why that's important. Now, the errors over here are two. First of all, it's flat, and fascia is 3 or 4 dimensional. It's in the round, so to speak, within us, from the top of our heads to the bottom of our feet. And it looks like these are empty spaces over here. There are no empty spaces within fascia. This would be filled with this polysaccharide ground substance, but the air got in there and opened up that space with air rather than the glucopolysaccharide ground substance. And here's the marvelous video that you can see on YouTube.
Seemed to be able to shear off and reflect as if nothing had happened.
So
they also seem to be able.
The narrator then is talking about the dynamic aspect of fascia and how it moves constantly and how it's elongated and compressed, and you can see the fluid nature of it and the fibrils, the fibrillar network, as Jean-Claude calls it. And this is a computer model of that. You see all the polygons in there, and they're really polygons that help fascia move. there you'll see triangles that they're very stable, but then you'll find 4 bars and 5 bars and 6 bars, kinematic chains that open up and allow fascia to move continually. But what I really wanted you to see mostly is that this dynamic aspect of it, and oh, come on, I'm sorry. And the idea that this, it's so fluid. And in just a second, there it is. Okay. Can you see how fluid it is? And you can see that blood vessel embedded within it. Fascia, it doesn't just surround it, everything's embedded within it. And it's very, you can see the dewdrops on the fibrillar area. And I always show patients this particular stretch, the blood vessel and the fat cells. And I say, let's pretend my hands are above and below here. And I'm pressing down, and then I'm going to open up and watch what happens to the fascia when I press in and then elongate, and how the fascia then conforms to that compression and tension and opens up, and you get what we call a fascial release, or a release of energy that's stuck in there. And that's how mobile fascia is, and how it's always there supporting us. And what I want to show you here is the fact that this fascia is outside every single cell in our body. I mean, not outside, but the cells are embedded in it. And this model, this picture here shows you a cell membrane with integrins. And then here's the fascia, the extracellular matrix. The extracellular matrix is the immediate outer environment of every single cell. Because if cells are embedded in it, of course, as soon as you go through the cell membrane, that's where the fascia is. And it's dynamic. It's a structure that's very dynamic. So here we have the bilipid membrane here, and then in the diagram it's here, and here are the integrins. And this says water, but this is the extracellular matrix. And then these are the microtubules of the structural support of the cytoplasm. And I want to show this to you in a marvelous video called The Inner Life of a Cell. And you can get this on YouTube. I'm going to show you a little bit of it today. I'm going to turn the sound off. It's got marvelous music, though. So here you see the cells and the extracellular matrix. There's the bilipid membrane and the extracellular matrix, and the integrins, the bilipid, and there's a floating kind of mechanism on top of, not a mechanism, a living vibrating substance. This is within the cytoplasm itself. You can see all the protein molecules and the structure of the microtubules that has two kind of functions. It's for structure. It's a scaffolding within the cytoplasm, but it's also a pathway for proteins to be able to follow that pathway and move things around inside the cell. All of this is taking place in the cytoplasm now, and little kind of molecules come and here's a tubule being formed, an actin tubule being formed, and then it disperses when it's no longer needed. And here's the messenger molecule moving the something along the tubule. This is a cartoon, but this is what really happens in the cell all the time. Every millisecond, there's a sausage-like mitochondria, and here are cells coming up to form protein chains. They loop together, and then different molecules come together and form this protein chain to form the amino acids that the cell needs for energy. And you can tell that I get really, really excited. Look how now the mitochondria it's gonna absorb that right through the membrane. And I just every one of our cells is just a miracle, and all of this is happening every millisecond. And there's that messenger molecule pulling that thing along there. This is the reticular activating system. And then when the reticular activating system is done with the glucose and making the energy, it pushes it out, goes out to the cellular membrane and up into the extracellular matrix to be flown along with the lymph system. Anyway, oh, and here's a white blood cell. Look how the white blood cell, and they're very much like viruses, they'll go underneath the fascia, and the fascia will, and they'll go underneath and then be able to find the viruses and the bacteria. Fascia is the home of the white blood cell. There are red blood cells. Anyway, obviously I'm very excited about the inner life of the cell. And mostly I just wanted you to understand that cells and fascia are just integrally involved with one another in a dynamic way that is very mysterious. There's nothing miraculous about it. It's very mysterious. And I invite you to look deeper into the inner life of a cell. But, you know, Susan Lowell told a story last week. Susan Lowell de Solorzano, a biotensegrity scholar, told a story last week of two fish swimming along. Christine, remember my tank in Miami? Two fish swimming along, and then another fish coming along and saying, "How's the water?" And the one fish looks at the other one and says, "What's water?" Because they're immersed in it. It's like, how's the weather? Well, we can tell the characteristics of the weather, but can you imagine a day without weather? Can you imagine a day without energy? You can't. And that's the point I'm trying to make. We are so much a part. We are energy, and so much a part of energy that to break it down and try to figure out how energy impacts all of that you saw moving inside the inner life of a cell is really the work of scholars that I've tried to break down and make more clear, because fascia is the structure that allows energy flow to be able to do its work so that we can have health and homeostasis. So when we're talking about energy, we have to remember that all creation, everything in the whole planet as we know it, in the cosmos as we know it, vibrates. Nothing is still. And that is, everything is composed of vibrating atoms. Remember the nucleus, and then protons and neutrons, and then electrons, an electron field out here. And they're constantly moving, constantly vibrating. These are the building blocks of everything that we know, including ourselves. And the density of the creation, the chair that you're sitting on, the floor that you're sitting on is very dense. You don't feel that vibration. But if you take your pulse, you can feel your vibration, one of your vibrations. But the density of the creation correlates with the sum vibrational frequency of what has been created. And each cell, every single one of our 35 to 75 trillion cells in our body, every cell in living structures vibrates at its own frequency. And all that is in the universe is known to us is only 4%. Everything that we see and hear and taste and touch and smell, 4%. 96% of all that is in the universe is dark energy and dark matter. We can't experience it directly. So we've got to come at it sideways. And that's what I'm trying to do today, coming at energy sideways, the energy that's within us, the energy that forms us, and the energy that keeps us living and moving and able to interact with one another. We have to measure it indirectly. This is a problem for science, materialistic science, reductionistic science. We want to be able to say it's true because we've seen it. It's true because we can measure it. We know that what we see is what we've measured. And energy eludes measurement, direct measurement. No one's ever seen an electron, ever. We see an image of a photon. Well, every time we look at the sun, we see an image of a photon. But we also have computer programs that can capture a pixel that's that stands for a photon, and we can watch flow of photons on the pixels of a computer. We can watch flow inside of us too, with PET scans and MRIs, fluid functional MRIs, not two-dimensional static pictures, but moving pictures of energy flow within us. dark matter and dark energy is what we're talking about here today. And then other forms of energy too. There's potential energy, the energy that's like in a battery that's ready to be used. Kinetic energy, energy that moves things. Thermal energy, energy that's released during energy that comes from the sun, certainly warm energy that's released in the change in the second law of thermodynamics. When warm things become cooler and cool things become warmer, depending on the atmosphere that they're in. There's chemical energy that's given off when when molecules come together in chemistry to form new substances or are drawn apart. Nuclear energy, when the nucleus of an atom explodes and the energy that's given off from that. Excuse me. And then the body energies, energies that are, all of these energies are within the body, chemical energy, kinetic energy, potential energy. But when we're looking at cellular energy, we focus in on certain energies that give us information about how cellular dynamics work. Oh, and I skipped over them. Electrical, electromagnetic, subtle energy, and biotensegral energy. We're going to talk about each of those in depth. But remember, vibration is the key to all flow. And if you haven't read James Oschman's book, Energy, Medicine, the New Science, the science itself, this is the book that I go to time and again. Jim Oschman is a marvelous, wonderful scientist who reports science and is a kind and generous intellectual genius who writes for the understanding of all of us. So if you don't have that book and you're interested in the science behind all this, I really encourage you to buy it. The different vibrations that are key to that are in the body are breath, of course, and blood and nerve transmission, synaptic flow, neurotransmitters and neuropeptides, the fluid nervous system that I didn't know anything about when I was in PT school in 1967 to 69. The fluid nervous system wasn't developed yet. If you want to know more about that, neurotransmitters, neuropeptides, and steroids, hormone flow as communication system, that's Candace Pert, Molecules of Emotion. All of this is in the references at the end of the slide presentation. Cytokines, little messenger molecules that are telling the body what to do. The cytokines are responsible when you get a cut to get the fibrinogen in there and to get the white blood cells there and to close the wound up and get the platelets working. They're sometimes called interleukins, different interleukins that are responsible for communicating within the fascial web itself. Steroids, of course, hormones, and thoughts. We know that thoughts are vibration within fascia. And so we have Alex Gray's wonderful picture here of the human energy systems, the biofield, which is the electromagnetic field surrounding the body and permeating the entire system. Again, we're in 2D. It should be in 4D. And by 4D, I mean, certainly we'd see the whole, the morphology of it, but we'd see the in and the out and the up and the down and the through and the back and the torus coming in. And we think that this energy field around may have information, maybe the DNA actually from within as well. But then there are local fields like these chakras that are concentrated vortexes that line up with the midline and permeate specific areas. Some science says that they correlate with the endocrine system very tightly, but they also interact with the biofield around the body. And then we have meridians, the acupuncture meridians, the pathways of energy flow correlating different parts of the body, connecting different parts of the body with other parts of the body. And these energy pathways are beautifully described in these two references. Certainly anything that Helena Langevin wrote before she became the head of the Center for Complementary and Alternative Therapies at the NIH in the United States. and then Diane Feinstein and Donna Eden. Their article, Six Pillars of Energy Medicine, is a real go-to article for me. It's in the references at the end. So now let's switch to fascia again and talk. What about this energy within the fascia, the largest sensory organ in the body? I want to give credit to John Barnes, who asked that this drawing be done. And it's a model, it's a drawing, a depiction, and like all models are helpful, but no models are totally accurate. But it does give a kind of a sense of fascia, those fractal tubular network going from the top of the head, one continuous tissue from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet, through and through. There are 250 million nerve endings in fascia. Get your head around that. But in addition, and part of all that are the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. There are free nerve endings. There are proprioceptors. There are exteroceptors. The proprioceptors give us a sense of positioning in space, where we can close our eyes and know that my arms are straight out to the side. Our interoceptors, we're going to get into detail. It gives us a somatic sense and an emotional sense of who we are. The vestibular system gives us a sense of where we are in space. And if you ever have an inner ear problem, you know how critical it is that inner ear is continually being like a servo mechanism to orient us to up and down and left and right and gravity. If your inner ear gets knocked out for any reason, as mine has from a COVID complication, and you have vertigo and extreme dizziness, you have severe nausea as a result. The brain can't make sense of what's going on, and the body's response is to just throw up. It just throws up, and it's awful. And then we have, as a part of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, that teaches us about the sympathetic nervous system, particular fight or flight or freeze, or I like the word finagle. This is new to me. I hadn't heard this until recently. There are some people in extreme conflict situations, like somebody's got a gun in your face. They can't fight because the gun will go off. They can't flee because they're afraid that they can't flee. They can't fight because they're afraid the gun will go off. And they are frozen, but they have the wherewithal to try to finagle their way out of the situation. And I have a dear friend who is a Unitarian minister, who was getting in her car in Miami and closed the door, and this young teenager sticks this gun through the window in her face and says, "Give me all your money." And she just froze. But then she had the presence of mind to look from the gun up into the eyes and saw the fear in the teenager's face. And she very gently put her hand up on the barrel of the gun, and she turned the gun away and said, "You don't want to do this. You don't want to do this." And he fled. So I can't imagine having that sense of calm, but that's what I call finagle, using the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. It was really parasympathetic that moved in to kind of help take over. But when we're talking about fascia as a sensory organ, the largest and most significant sensory organ, we're really talking more than just nerves being embedded in fascia. The perineurium around the cable nerves, the perineurium around the white matter and gray matter of the brain. It's more than that, because embedded within fascia are these free nerve endings, but also there are ion channels under the skin that aren't nerves themselves, but you've heard them probably, piezoelectric receptors. In fact, there was a Nobel Prize in 2021 given to the two scientists that found these piezo2 channel ions underneath this, in the fascia underneath the epidermis. And they're not nerves per se, but they channel the stimulus from the skin down to the free nerve endings deeper in the fascia. So the fascia itself is sensory in that sense. And it's sensory in another sense that I'm going to get to in just a second. So fascia does what we call signal transmission through the fluid nervous system, the neuropeptides, the neurotransmitters, the steroids, and it's an immune system's facilitator. You saw that white blood cell flowing right along in the fascia. Fascia is the home of the white blood cell. And then it's a network. Fascia is this network for communication so that all the cells know what's happening with all the other cells through these various forms of communication. We used to think that the nerves, the brain and the spinal cord were the only way, and the nerves, peripheral nerves, were the only way that cells communicated with each other. We were really wrong about that. Fascia plays a major role. So now let's zero in now on bodily energies and the energy that it takes for us to function and why fascia is so important. There's electrical energy, and that's the movement of electrons within and outside cells. You saw it in the form of the molecules within the cytoplasm. But for example, when the mitochondria use glucose and oxygen to form energy, ATP, they give off hydrogen. And that hydrogen molecule and its electrons get tossed out through the cell membrane into the lymphatics in the fascia, in the extracellular matrix. So all of that is electron flow. Ions, which are nothing more than molecules and atoms needing an electron to balance it, unstable, they call them free radicals. Unstable atoms searching for a balancing electron. They are moving around and they're part of the flow. They're part of the vibration. They carry electrical charges within the fascial network, and they drive things like breath and nerve conduction and digestion and muscle activity or myofascial activity. There's no such thing as muscle within the fascia itself and within the blood vessels. So that's electrical energy. Electromagnetic energy is a little bit different. It's waves of energy. And there are two kinds of waves. There are these vertical waves. That's what we usually think of when we think of waves. And then there are horizontal waves. But all of these electromagnetic waves are in us. And they're part of that flow that transmits energy to keep us healthy. When we talk about subtle energy, we're talking simply about electrons and photons, and to some extent protons. I've got James Oshman on the hook for trying to tell me more about how do protons work in fascia. And he says, I got to find some references for you, but I have to remind him again. Subtle energy are the energies that are known because of their effects, but they're not detectable directly. Electrons and photons. For example, we can detect the speed of transmission of a stimulus on an acupuncture point on the bottom of the foot, all the way up to the brain in the sensory motor cortex, faster than any neural transmission. So it's faster than the 0.02 millimeters per second, whatever neural transmission is. And it's actually quantum speed. It's so fast, it's immediate. And Jim Oshman talks about this in his book, Energy Medicine. When we're talking about central energy flow throughout the body, it has taken on a name in holistic therapies and Eastern thought of chi, or ki, or chi, or prana, or vitas, the energy of life flowing through the vibration, flowing through the fascia. And then we have biotensegrity. Biotensegrity is a special way of setting your lenses to look at all of those flows that I've been talking to you about, that is fueled by this flow that comes in at the moment of conception. And it's the flow that comes with the sperm and the egg coming together and forming life. And the energy that forms that life is the sum of compression and tension. It's a constant sum of compression and tension both that stimulates all of the flows and holds both the structure and the function of fascia. It gives it volume. It gives the cells volume because the tension and compression are working together to open up and then keep firm all the way from the cell nucleus out to the skin, out into the cosmos. Is what we see in the Hubble pictures, the spirals and that's biotensor. Well, that's source energy, from which my opinion, from which biotensegral energy emerges at the moment of conception. And here I have two interesting pictures. And I thank Christine for the picture on the right. This is a fibroblast. And fibroblasts are important because they actually make fascia. They're constantly forming fascia in us. We're constantly getting rid of old cells and forming new cells. And then on the left is a picture of an embroidery that my Aunt Emily did, my father's sister, Emily Davis Vanderpool, did that embroidery. If you look at the fine needlework, the whole background is embroidered as well. This was just a piece of linen or embroidery cloth. And it's been totally covered, embedded with colored thread. And this is Rosa rosacea, one of our beautiful beach rose that we have. We have them in Miami to some extent, but we have them a lot up here in Maine. And it's, look at the beautiful fine work of my Aunt Emily, how she took the needle and that was an empty space. And she took that needle and thread up and pulled it up and then put it back down again and pulled it tight to form that beautiful picture. And we have her pictures all over the house. They're museum quality, really. But what does that picture have to do with this fibroblast? And this is a wonderful microscopic picture of a cell nucleus and the cytoplasm of the cell. Look at the spirals, and then the cell membrane around the edge of that fibroblast. Okay, how do they go together? Well, first of all, we're not machines. We know that. We say that all the time. You saw that beautiful fluid fascia. There's nothing in us that is solid state physics or machine-like, nothing. We talk about the mechanism of action. Well, there is no mechanism. It's creation of soft matter that forms us. We are a complex organizational system composed of many other systems, all communicating with each other via vibration. This is the work of Neil Thies in Notes on Complexity, a wonderful book about systems theory. And I encourage you to, can you see it? Notes on Complexity, a wonderful book. It's easy to read and easy enough for me to read, so it'll be easy enough for you to read. And it's all about systems theory and how energy and the plasma, the energy plasma, is the foundation of everything on the planet. But we are a system. We are a complex organizational system made up of many other systems. The cardiovascular system, the cardiorespiratory system, all the systems that we think of. But fascia is the highest system. It's the most organizing of the systems because it allows for the communication for all the other systems. It's a hierarchy of systems, with fascia being the hierarchy of the hierarchies. We are composed of fascia and these parenchymal cells. Now, what are parenchymal cells? Well, if I have a liver, you have a liver, it's over here. You have a liver, I have a liver. That liver is not just liver cells, it's liver in fascia. This heart isn't just heart cells, it's heart cells within fascia. The parenchymal cells are the organ cells embedded within the fascia, just like every one of those little threads that my Aunt Emily sewed into that fabric. We are composed of fascia and parenchymal cells that are embedded within fascia that function in dynamic harmony as one system. That's one picture. This is one cell. And this is the work of Stephen Levin, the father of biotensegrity. And then quoting Stephen further with Graham Scarr, fascia functions as a dynamic, nothing static about it. It's always moving. Structure of biotensegral energy, a dynamic flow of continuous compression and tension, continuous sum of compression and tension that supports us as efficiently as it can in every moment, as it responds in every moment to internal and external forces acting on it. The biggest, of course, in our universe is gravity, but there are a lot of internal forces that are pulling on the fascia too. We'll talk about that in a minute. So, in sum, we are more than just cable nerves. We have a vital life force, in my opinion, and the opinion of many scientists, that flows through us in a torus like this, in 4 dimensions. So you can see height and width and breadth, but then you see the energy turns back on itself. This is the energy of the heart. That's a torus that turns back on itself and flows through it. And then the electromagnetic energy that turns back on itself and flows through it. There is a fluid nervous system, neurotransmitters and neuropeptides that communicate, as Candace Pert tells us, in molecules of motion. And then James Oshman talks to us about the subtle energy, rapid flow of signals from acupuncture points that also communicate to get things working together. And the vibration of thought. Every time we think, there is a vibration inside us, not just inside our brain, but in the whole of us. So now, shifting gears. Take a deep breath and take a drink of water. We're going to shift to interoceptors.
Carol, I don't know if it's me, but I can't see your slide anymore.
Uh-oh.
I can still see them. Does anybody else?
Oh,
It must be just you. We can see them.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
okay.
So you
Okay,
might have to
thanks.
just click something. Okay. Phew.
Thank you for.
Everything okay?
Yeah, you're good. We can see your slides.
Okay.
Carol, I'm just wondering real briefly, and only if this fits, but before we switch gears, is there anything you can say about fascia as a semiconductor?
Yeah, I can say what Jim Oshman has told me it is.
Awesome.
A semiconductor is a material, any kind of material that encourages the flow of electrons in a line. Water is a pure conductor. And so you get, if you drop an electrical appliance in the bathtub, you're going to electrocute yourself. Water is a pure conductor. A semiconductor takes these electrons, and then because of the nature of the semiconductor, some of the electrons flow out to the side. And that's what happens with H3O2 too. It's crystalline. The fascia is a crystalline semiconductor. And so these electrons are flowing in easy water, for example, but some of them are going off onto the side. It's not as efficient as pure conductor, like air and water are pure conductors. Does that help? Christine?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Wow.
So now there are the interoceptors. And you know, I could riff off on that H3O2 thing forever. We'll get to it a little bit later in the slide presentation, but the liquid crystalline matrix is a really important part of why fascia is such a good conductor of information. But when we're talking about interoceptors, we're talking about 2 things. We're talking about that nervous system, which tells us about the condition inside our bodies. Interoceptors are free nerve endings that are found throughout the body. And the exteroceptors are the sensory vibration translators that we think of most often when we think about sensation: eyes, ears, nose, touch, and taste. They're extrosurface. They're connecting us, communicating what's outside of us to our brains to make sense of it. But proprioceptors are those nerve endings that tell us where we are in space, in terms of where we're positioned and where our body is in space. And sometimes proprioceptors include vestibular balance. But the interoceptors are two kinds. They're somatic and they're emotional. The somatic exteroceptors or interoceptors are those nerve endings which give information up to the insula in the body, in the brain, that are coming from the viscera, the autonomic nervous system, the hormones, immunological, breathing, blood pressure, cardiac, temperature, digestion. It's giving us information about our body. It's going up the spinal cord. Those free nerve endings are picking up these signals, the communication. It's going up the spinal cord, in the spinal thalamic tract. It gets to the laminar tract. It gets to the thalamus, which is the train station. Some of it goes up to some of the sensation goes up to the sensory motor cortex, but the interoceptive takes a right or left-hand turn into the insula, which is behind the frontal lobe and behind the parietal lobe. So you have to pick remember that, Christine, when we did that brain together? You have to pick up the gray matter of the frontal and the parietal, and in there is this arc-shaped gyrus, and that's the interoceptive network. Now, that is the anterior, middle, and posterior insula. That's the part of the brain that's interpreting the emotions, and also interpreting the somatic. The dorsal, the signals that go to the dorsal insula are automatic. It's like the autonomic nervous system. We don't have to worry about heart rate. We don't have to worry about whether we don't have enough calcium, because the interoceptors say, oh, we need calcium, and the bones start leaching out calcium to balance for muscle contraction, for example, or myofascial contraction. That we don't have to think about. But the anterior insula and the middle and anterior insula gives us information about how we feel about what we're feeling. In other words, if I'm cold, am I happy about that, or am I upset about that? It's the connection with our emotions. And because of that, excuse me, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Fascia can be seen as an extended sensory organ working synergistically with the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, particularly. Remember, the 10th cranial nerve is a plexus. It comes down right at the brainstem area off both sides. It's both motor and sensory aspects to it. It's a large cable nerve, but then it branches out, and it has both motor and sensory branches. So it's stimulating the diaphragm, for example, stimulating peristalsis in the gut, but it's also picking up it's stimulating the heart, but it's also picking up the sensation of the heart. The vagus nerve is really the main communication channel for what's happening inside of us. The term sentience, so if some living thing has sentience, that means it has feelings. Have you seen the videos on octopus and also some on dolphins and whales? And elephants. We were so narrow-minded when we thought that only human beings had sentience. All these animals have feelings and show feelings toward their young and toward each other and toward us. That octopus's teacher is a phenomenal video. If you haven't seen that one, there's a relationship that's formed between this diver and the octopus. They only go through one life cycle. They're born, they grow, and they are around for a few months or a year or so, and then they lay eggs and then they die. But and they can change form and color. And are they ever extroceptive and interoceptive, aware of their environment? If something comes along that scares them, they can change their form and their color immediately. It's really fascinating. I can't eat calamari anymore. Many living things have sentience. Trees have sentience. Trees can communicate with one another if there's a toxin in the air. The mother tree will send through the fascia underneath the soil to the other trees to close their leaves up. Sentience is sensing, interpreting, integrating, and regulating signals from within the body self. And there are signals from the vagus, sensory peripheral nerves, organs, chemistry, thought. Interoceptors are embedded within the fascia web from just under the skin. The largest concentration of sympathetic nervous system endings is right under the skin, all the way down into the bones. And interoception has to do with both figuring out cognitive, what's wrong, what's wrong with me, why am I feeling this way, and emotional, the feeling tone of what we're feeling. It's also the ability for us to have what we call an embodied sense, embodiment, and somatic embodiment, bodily ability to feel. Did you ever, those of you who are manual therapists and movement therapists too, if you say to somebody, now bring your attention down inside your body, feel what it feels like in your diaphragm, and they look at you like you're absolutely crazy because they're this big. And I say that with all the love and compassion I can, because I was once this big. I really had to work in my 20s because I grew up with a lot of chaos in my family, and so I couldn't feel my feelings much. I had to develop a tube down into my heart to feel what I was feeling when I was young. And the less aware we are of our feelings and our interoceptive sense, the less responsive we can be to what our body needs, and responsive to other people too. Some people say that there is a thread of science now in working with kids on the spectrum, children and adults on the spectrum, that they're less aware interoceptively. And so how do you develop that with people? Well, one of the common ways, the Institute of Heart Math works with this a lot online if you're interested in this, Institute of Heart Math. But one of the ways is to teach yourself how to be able to feel your cardiac rhythm without taking your pulse, to just feel it beating inside your body. And you can do that. You can teach yourself how to do that. So that's where they start often with kids who lack the ability to be aware of the feelings of other people and therefore act in ways that are kind and appropriate. But the interoceptors give us a felt sense of I, and this is through the insula. And it's necessary for consciousness. Well, what is consciousness? Consciousness means awareness of who I am in this moment, and who I was 10 seconds ago, and who I may be 10 minutes from now. I can start to anticipate who I might be. That's the ground of being. That's the foundation. And there's a whole science on what came first, the cosmos or consciousness. And there are many people who say the consciousness came first. The only way that we can have anything is because consciousness came first. And that kind of consciousness is often associated with the Big Bang consciousness, the source energy from the spirals and the gravity that came from the moment of when everything began. We talk about raising our consciousness when what we're trying to do is bring people's awareness into more complete a wholeness of self and others. So the core of our very sense of self, the science of selfhood, and the threshold of consciousness is interoception. It's physiology and emotions that are coupled, dynamically coupled in this mental life, but also our physiological life throughout the body. The central and autonomic nervous systems interacting continuously. It's the higher cognition and the emotions acting on and through each other. And it's a constant physiological adjustment to a changing environment, internally and externally, is made possible through our interoceptors. So, because we learned incomplete science and erroneous science from the 1500s forward, I'm thinking about now Leonardo da Vinci and his drawings, and then Descartes with his scalpel opening up the body. We put together an idea about how we work, how life works, that is very, very incomplete and erroneous. But we say that, but then we sometimes act as if it's still true. What's required is a paradigm shift. And so what's true about this figure here is that you can either see the black vase or you can see the white faces looking up toward the ceiling, but you can't see them both at the same time. And if you're only looking at the black vase, you're never going to see the faces. If you're only looking at the faces, you're never going to see the vase. So we have to learn how to do both. And we have to learn how to do it in a very esoteric way because we can't measure it directly. So that's what this is all about. We're trying to change what we learned in school about the body over on the left, which was primarily built, and fascial is the myofascia that's mostly torn away here to show the muscles. That's not fascia. Fascia is the web. Those are drawings of fascia that's very incomplete. They're pieces of fascia that form the structure around the myofascia. But over on the right is really the foundation of who we are. And that's dynamic and that's flowing. We can no longer ignore these energy flows. We gotta form our understanding of how we work and how we work with each other as driven by this dynamism. So as I said before, over on the right, you can see the forefathers. There weren't any women in there, I don't think, with scalpels, opening up the body, getting permission from the Pope to be able to work with the body. The Pope said, "You work with the body, and religion will work with the mind and the soul." And we thought, because Descartes' father was a watchmaker, he thought, oh, well, this is kind of like the parts of a watch. And so he started to cut with his scalpel. And as soon as we cut with a scalpel, we got rid of the web and we got layers. And our two-dimensional drawings still show those layers. They don't show the web. Using the scalpel took us down a long road, identifying parts, a linear perspective, and a machine model. But fascia and biotensegrity disrupts this machine metaphor. We have to look at the whole system and what is interfering with flow in the whole system, and finding those fascial restrictions that are interfering with the flow and release them, or release the energy that's stuck in them. And we do that through organic and plant-based foods, getting rid of the toxins in our body. We do it manually through our manual therapies, Reiki and myofascial release and craniosacral and yoga, energetically moving our bodies energetically, acupuncture and frequency-specific microcurrent, and then somatic movement-based with yoga and so forth. Take a look here at this drawing again I got from John Barnes. This fascial restriction form pattern might have started as a hamstring pull, but the person comes to me with pain in their neck. And in the old linear way, the linear perspective, in the old way, a physician says, do physical therapy to their neck. And this is what you do. You do hot packs, you do baby ultrasound and massage and exercise. And then you take care of that neck pain. But if you don't, and that's the old days before physical therapists worked independent of physician referral. But if you don't take care of this hamstring problem and this constriction over here, this pulling like crazy on the web, you're going to come back to you, of course, with neck pain and difficulty inflating their lungs, and also some pain in their legs. We got to start talking about and thinking about and acting as if this is a whole. This is a morphological whole. And then bioenergy based, which is what Reiki is particularly, but also all of these integrative therapies are bioenergy. When we're talking about fascial restrictions or adhesions, what we're talking about is that polysaccharide ground substance comes together, condenses together, and gets really stiff and leathery and hot because it's hurting. There's a lot of cellular metabolism and it's pressing on pain-sensitive structures. Here you see a fascial restriction in muscle, and you can imagine how hard that is. And so can we do anything about that? Well, yes, we can. Fascia allows us to open up this condensed area, dehydrated area, because it's soft tissue and it's a gel and it folds together on itself. Collagen and the elastin fold together on itself, and we can press and elongate and it'll unfold. It'll soften because the heat from our hands, the infrared energy from our hands, and we can get it to move. And that movement, that repetitive movement, pushes the fluid that gets it to open up. These adhesions come from surgery, posture, sitting the same way. All this fascia will go right to where we want it to hold us. Inflammation, when we have an inflammatory process, the cellular byproducts of inflammation will be these kind of fascial restrictions. Aging, which is response to gravity over long years on the planet, and dehydration, and then repetitive motion injuries. Musicians, people using their thumbs, conductors doing the same motions over and over again on the computer, carpal tunnel, repetitive motion injuries causes these adhesions, which prohibit correct alignment and correct opening up of the fascia so the fascia can communicate, and cause pain from pressure on pain-sensitive structures, and interferes with all of that wonderful communication that's going on, and interrupts homeostasis because the flows keep homeostasis, homeodynamics going, keep everything healthy, which are needed for balance and health. Fascia allows us to help it become more effective and efficient by releasing stiffness and hydrating. We get hydration through the water we drink, but it comes in as H2O, and as Gerald Pollack tells us on the fourth phase of water, H2O, as it comes into the alimentary canal, spirals around, and the stable triangle molecule of H2O change into H3O2, a very unstable, flat molecule, and it becomes crystalline, liquid crystalline, and in that fascia, and it changes consistency. And that type 2 gel, that glucopolysaccharide ground substance, then is affected by our pressure and elongation through the piezoelectric effect, pressure, electricity, electron flow that is from mechanotransduction, causes the fascia to then open up and water to come in. When we release our hands, the fluid comes in. Thixotrophy is the term that we give to soft matter when it changes consistency, when it comes from stiff to more soft through temperature change, pressure, and movement. So the stiffness yields to compliance and hydration, and then we can move better. And the father of mechanotransduction, the explanation of how all this works down to the cellular nucleus, and the person who really understood the icosahedral tension compression structure of cells, that tension compression balance, is Donald Ingber here, who's explaining the DNA is affected in the nucleus of the cell through, let's take a look at this. Here's the cell membrane over here on the right. And here's the collagen from the extracellular matrix, the fascia. We press on the fascia. The piezoelectric effect goes through the integrins, through the cell membrane, into the nucleus of the cell, along these fibers that you saw from the inner life of a cell, through the nuclear membrane into the fibers of the DNA of the genes of the nucleus. So from all the way out here to all the way in here, every time we're touching someone, we're directly affecting energetically the nucleus of the cells that are underneath our hands. Pretty powerful. So here's the official definition of mechanotransduction. In cellular biology, mechanotransduction, any of the various mechanisms, not just pressure, by which cells convert mechanical stimulus into electrical activity. Now, fascia does this. Fascia is a transducer. It takes one form of energy and changes it to another. This form of sensory transduction is responsible for a number of senses that we perceive and physiological processes. The ability for a wound to close up. Proprioception, touch, balance, and hearing are all part of mechanotransduction. It's vibration that's being interpreted. The eardrum is vibrating, the tongue vibrates, the nasal nares vibrate, the receptors vibrate. Touch and eye are vibrators. They're sending signals to the brain by way of the fascia. But the basic mechanism of mechanotransduction involves converting mechanical signals into electrical and chemical signals. So, and here we have what we often use as a model to demonstrate a metaphor, or no, it's a model. The fascia is like Jello. And the banana isn't really like a fascial restriction because bananas are not made up of Jello, they're made up of fruit. So if those bananas were just condensed fascia, it would be more like fascia with condensation, condensed areas. The liquid crystal matrix is made up of an unstable lattice structure with water, H3O2, crystalline water. The mechanotransduction pressure releases electrons in this liquid crystal matrix, and then through thixotropy, the matrix changes from a solid to a softer gel, and we can move. And we can allow soft balls, to help us with these fascial restrictions. Because we don't just need it's not just our hands, balls form pressure on the fascia as well. It doesn't have the infrared energy or the energy from my heart going into your system, but the ball has energy in and of itself. So when we place balls, we're using mechanotransduction pressure. Much like soft hands in myofascial release, mechanoreceptors and interoceptors help us know where to place the ball to have the maximum advantage. The liquid crystal matrix softens as we soften into the ball with piezoelectric flow, and then the fascial restrictions or the condensations become less stiff and more compliant. It's really self-care. So the basic principles of self-care, myofascial release or self-yoga or myofascial yoga using balls are to set aside time. You're not going to do it when you're thinking about something else. This is the time for me to devote to my self-care. And you lie still or you sit very still. And then you drop your attention from your brain down into your body, just like when you go into meditation. Going down into your body. And then via your interoceptors, feel in your body, where am I uncomfortable? Where is there tension? Where could I use some help? Where is there pain? And then breathe into those spaces. Open up the fascia from the inside by moving the lungs and moving the fascia around the pleura out against the myofascia. It surrounds the ribs and the lungs. And then place soft balls where your mechanoreceptors and your interoceptors guide you. Oh, right on my right piriformis. Okay. Sink into that area and visualize the fascial gel softening. Just as John Barnes suggests, go to the barrier and wait. Sustained pressure and elongation. Wait there with gentle pressure for at least 5 minutes before shifting. Why long time? Because the studies show that the interleukins take that long to be able to bring about the positive chemistry, biochemistry, that fascial release it allows for us. So, in sum, what were my key questions? Did I do this? Do you have any questions? What is living fascia? And what is the extracellular matrix? And the ground substance? And what is a fascial restriction and how does it affect our movement in the world? What is interoception and how does that work? And what's the connection between interoception and fascia? And then what is the effect of our softball placement on fascial areas of discomfort? And that's what, if you have any questions about any of that, that's what we'll do now. And here are my references. And you'll be able to then go dig deeper.
Carol, you kind of already said it, but just because we were talking about it this morning, I'm wondering if we can highlight a little bit of the difference between, say, using a myofascial tool to do like self-applied deep tissue massage versus that slow sinking in and interoceptive awareness. Like, how are those two approaches different?
Well, self-myofascial massage of sinking your hands in and waiting at the barrier is going to be connected to your heart if you're doing it correctly. And it's going to be connected to your whole energy flow. You're going to have resonance from your heart and your essence out your arms and out your hands into the fascia of somebody else or your own fascia if you're doing a release on your legs, which is how John Barnes discovered myofascial release. He was working on his own quadriceps. So that kind of release using your hands has a different feel to it. It's energized in a different way. Whereas a soft ball is focused pressure from a flexible ball that conforms to the tissue and is able, and if you don't move, it stays there, but it's not generating energy from within itself, very limited energy from within itself. Does that answer your question, Christine? I'm not sure.
Yes, in part, but also like, you know how in some forms of, let's say, myofascial yoga, or there's some even that call it myofascial release, but it's a different approach. It's almost like the kind that like hurts, where you're kind of going for a deep tissue, kind of almost like a stripping type of thing. So yeah, it's like the difference between like the gentle way and the more vigorous way. Is there?
Oh, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
The soft tissue of the soft matter that fascia is made of is a substance that's a non-Newtonian solid. It's like oobleck. It's like cornstarch and water together. So that with oobleck, if you have a bowl of oobleck and you take your fingertips and you press down, it'll bounce right off the top of the oobleck. That's what soft matter's like. So when you're getting in there and you're carving away with your knuckles and your elbows and your fascia blaster, all it's doing is ripping apart cell membranes. But when you sink in, you go to the barrier and just sink in. You sink into, and then you're stopped by the collagen and you wait there. Then the reorganization that takes place, the collagen, the fascia reorganizes itself and finds its way home, so to speak. Does that answer it?
Yeah, so beautifully said. Thank you.